I think as gamers we can all at the very least agree that few things are more irritating than a game studio misleading their audience. Anthem, as we know by now, has been nothing but a giant misdirection. Recall that the E3 2017 gameplay presentation turned out to be completely fake, in no way, shape, or form representative of the final product. The E3 2018 gameplay, while closer to what the final product turned out to be, still showed a lot of elements that ultimately didn't pan out. And then there was the Our World, My Story trailer that touted a bunch of bullshit about the game's narrative elements. The trailer lied about how your actions have consequences in Fort Tarsus and how you'll occasionally meet shady figures that lead to different quests and whatever. When Anthem finally launched, it is safe to say that every aspect of it underwhelmed far more than anyone anticipated. This goes doubly true for the core loot system, which is still the game's biggest issue, which has still gone unaddressed, and Anthem just feels so insulting when you think about what was revealed in the expose in regards to how this game was intentionally marketed and just the circumstances surrounding it after launch. And then to make matters worse, the Cataclysm that they recently showcased, which is this big event, the thing that was supposed to save Anthem, isn't living up to what people were expecting, because what was promised was something much more grand, and what we actually got nowhere near lives up to what was advertised. Which is really a big blow for Anthem, because a lot of people were holding out hope for the Cataclysm to be the thing that would save Anthem, the thing to take the game to the next phase, to the next level, the event that would overhaul the game and really bolster its currently broken or undercooked mechanics. Many hoped that the Cataclysm would be what Reaper of Souls was to Diablo 3 or what Taken King was to Destiny, or at least a step in that direction. But nope, all we really learned was that the Cataclysm is a temporary event that will go away after a few weeks, and what you do in this event is you go around, kill waves of enemies, going from arena to arena to arena, trying to rack up score and keep the timer running as you keep doing stuff in the world before you go to a boss battle and you double your score. So you want to do as much as possible to just get the highest score before you reach the final boss and double that. That's basically the whole point. It is nothing revolutionary, nothing super new or creative. Other live services have done similar things before. Not to say this mode is inherently bad, it's just that it's not the game changer people hoped for, the game changer Anthem needs right now. It's just another thing keeping the game on life support. But most egregious of all really is that when you look at past footage, what they've said about the Cataclysm, what they have shown of it, the glimpses they have teased, you'll realize that the Cataclysm is just another giant broken promise, another giant misdirection. The first glimpse we got of the Cataclysm was back in E3 2017 when they showed that fake gameplay demo, and here is what that looked like back then.
Large-scale world events like Shaper Storms are dynamic and pull you off the beaten path with the promise of new stories to discover.
Oh, Shaper Storm incoming. Okay, actually, let's get some more people. Hold on a sec.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, what's happening?
I'm right behind you. Whoa. This storm is getting crazy. So what are we supposed to do? Fly into it?
All right, let's do this.
See you on the other side.
Our story is out there.
So that's about what the Cataclysm should look like. They were known as Shaper Storms back in the day because originally the game was supposed to be called Beyond as detailed by the expose, but securing the trademark for that proved difficult, so they decided last minute to change the name of the game to Anthem. but nobody knew what the term Anthem actually meant. They came up with the whole concept of the Anthem of Creation after the E3 2017 showcase, and that's when they developed this whole concept of the cataclysms that shaped the world and all that. So how these cataclysmic events tie into the lore, the naming conventions and stuff like that was come up with later, but the basic concept of what we now know as Cataclysm has been part of the game's concept for a while. And as you can see in this E3 2017 trailer, the idea was to have this completely seamless visual overhaul where the world around you changes, the storm suddenly comes in, starts tearing trees apart, wind starts blowing everywhere, and it really just feels like a very powerful hazard is happening all around you. That was the concept. That was what we were shown. That's what people expected in turn. But yeah, here's what we actually got.
All right, here we go.
Yeah. So when you leave the safe bubble, the first thing you'll notice is there is a crazy storm because you're in this cataclysm. You know, you can see the big waves, you can see trees blowing over. We really love the look of this. I think our artist did a polished push last week, and they're not quite finished, but I think it looks really cool so far, especially the storm effects, which aren't turning up so great right now, but you can see the trees being blown over and stuff like that. I think it's really cool.
A lot of people are making fun of how leaving the safe zone is basically the equivalent of applying an Instagram filter. The hue changes to blue, and then you see some trees kind of swaying here and there, and that's the extent to which they have overhauled the visuals to make it look like there's a storm in the area. Compared to what we saw in E3 2017, this is just the knockoff version. It looks more like a windy, cloudy day than the storm that we saw in the E3 2017 showcase. That actually looked like a big-ass storm was brewing, like something crazy was happening to the world. We know now, of course, that the E3 2017 gameplay presentation was completely fake, so it would be silly to expect that the actual Cataclysm would live up to that. But then again, the only reason we know to temper our expectations is because Jason Schreier went out of his way to do that expose that informed us about the game's behind-the-scenes goings-on and its troubled development. That E3 2017 gameplay presentation was very much more of a pitch video than something that's actually representative of a final product. The thing is, though, even closer to Anthem's release, BioWare kept talking about the Cataclysm and saying things about it that ultimately don't seem to be panning out. So as an example, back in June 2018, executive producer of Anthem Mark Darrah spoke to Game Informer to hint at what we would now know as Cataclysms. Here's the relevant excerpt in Game Informer's cover story of Anthem about the topic. The article reads, quote, "The world in Anthem is vast and volatile. At the time of its inception, gods known as Shapers used huge pieces of powerful technology to command a force called the Anthem of Creation, forming the planet. Then they left. For reasons unknown, the Shapers abandoned their work unfinished and left their incomprehensible devices behind. Their legacy is pervasive, since enormous pieces of Shaper technology litter the landscape, and they are far from dormant. They seem to activate randomly, causing cataclysmic changes to the world and creating a hostile environment that makes daily life a constant struggle. This is a world that is stuck in the middle of its genesis," says executive producer Mark Darrah. "The tools are just laying out on the workbench, turning themselves on and off and causing the world to shift and change." Conceptually, this all obviously sounds incredibly compelling, this notion of the world around you changing live and becoming hostile and things just going insane, but what we have here in the current version of the Cataclysm is that players get transported to this separate map, and that's where the storm stuff happens, except when you go in there, all you're really greeted with is an Instagram filter that turns everything blue and some swaying trees. Moving on, we have an interview between Mark Darrah and website GamesRadar that occurred a few days before the game's launch on February 2019. And here is what Dara had to say about the Cataclysm then. I mean, the goal would be new content every day of some form. I don't think we're going to get that, but it'd be nice to have some sort of touch point every single day. Cataclysms will obviously not be every day. They're designed to be content that you engage with for weeks, and they would come out less frequently. They are more meta-changing. They're designed to be more seasonal. The article then proceeds to echo what Dara said before about Cataclysms being meant to be world-changing, but so far there are no signs of the Cataclysm doing anything of the sort. At the very least, it is highlighted in these interviews that the Cataclysms were always meant to be seasonal, temporary events. People have an issue with the Cataclysm being temporary, given that Anthem currently lacks so much content. They would prefer permanent additions right about now. Something to note is that Jesse Anderson, the global community manager of Anthem, did hint on Twitter that aspects of the Cataclysm might not completely go away, but he hasn't provided exact details. He's actually being kind of vague and cryptic about it, which I don't get why. Now would be the time to get everything out there, let people know what the plans are to give them a sense of relief. He should detail exactly what is going away and what isn't, and let people have that ease of mind and maybe get some feedback along the way. But we know Cataclysms were always meant to be temporary, so that's one aspect that's true in terms of what they said about this event. On the other hand, we're seeing terms like world-changing and meta-changing, and that part doesn't seem to be panning out to the extent people had hoped for. There is obviously going to be new items and weapons and stuff in the Cataclysm event, so on some level that is meta-changing, but you would also think that part of changing the meta would involve fixing what is currently a very stingy and unsatisfying loot system. We then have an article from website Variety, who also talked to Mark Dara about the Cataclysm, and that article described Cataclysms as follows. Cataclysms will function similarly to seasonal content found in games like Fortnite, with a global change to the map, or what DICE is doing with Battlefield 5's Tides of War. These will be time-limited, thematic content that gives BioWare the chance to change how the world looks, feels, and reacts to players. Cataclysm events will only last for a limited period of time, and the core experience tied to them will also fit somewhere on the spectrum between a Destiny strike and raid. So once again, we were told some time back that Cataclysms are meant to be temporary events, but once again we're seeing promises about how this is all going to change the world, which doesn't seem to be the case at all. Not only are Cataclysms separate instances, we have also seen that the aesthetic changes that are in that separate instance, in that separate world, are woefully underwhelming. Again, the blue Instagram filter and the swaying trees versus the crazy storm that we saw in the E3 2017 showcase. Something else Mark Dara emphasized was that he intends to have players dictate how Anthem is built moving forward, which, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like that's a promise that they're keeping currently. He specifically said, quote, "What I want to move us toward is more of a conversation with the people playing the game. Our DLC has always been story-driven in the past, which is great, but it's always been really infrequent and really big, partially because it's been really infrequent, so it had to be really big. What that means is that it's not a conversation, it's more, here's a thing we hope you like, here's a thing we hope you like, here's a thing we hope you like. Too bad if you don't, we can't do anything about it. When you can get more of that more often, then we're able to react, evolve, and change. The people playing the game can influence what the game becomes over time. That's going to be true not just for Anthem, but for our games going forward in a way they haven't been able to in the past." The thing is, though, if you ask the Anthem community right now whether they feel like their feedback is being heard, whether it feels like their feedback is being valued, they'll probably tell you no. The biggest feedback right now, the constant feedback, is for Anthem to bolster loot, to turn up the hose and make it rain loot. And guess what? BioWare hasn't really listened, and I'm sure they have some kind of long-term plans to change the loot, but people are saying there needs to be a short-term solution to loot right now to keep the game fun before some major overhaul comes. But BioWare just, they're going at their own pace. They don't really seem to be taking the community's feedback to heart. And not to mention that up until the Cataclysm livestream, there was this month-long silence, which I personally think is completely unacceptable when your game is in the state that it is right now. While I understand that there are some things they can't talk about because their plan now is to talk about things closer to their release date so that they don't promise something and then not deliver on it, it's a whole other thing to just go completely radio silent silent, to not engage with your community even in minor ways. So this whole notion of a conversation between the player and the developers, that to me is bullshit, given what we have seen from Anthem's launch history. Trickling in updates that are just not panning out, that seem to be completely tone-deaf in terms of what the community is asking for. And their over-reliance on a roadmap featuring content that should have been in the base game in the first place is what's killing Anthem right now. Anyway, I digress. The bottom line is that the Cataclysm we have now is very much sort of a knockoff version of what we were told in the months leading up to Anthem's launch and what we were shown during E3 2017 in that absolutely fake and misleading gameplay demo. And on top of that, we have a game that's currently not evolving in accordance to the community feedback, despite the previous commitment to shape the game around what players are saying, except that players are telling you to boost the loot, and BioWare is not doing that, among many other things that they're not able to keep up with, or that they're willfully ignoring for whatever reason. Now, BioWare has been saying that they have a lot of content being worked on right now, that they haven't given up on Anthem, but by the time they actually do get substantial content out, I think it'll be too late. Hell, it's already too late now. Twitch viewership is at an all-time low. Players are having trouble finding other players to play with on matchmaking because of a lack of players. And even the most hardcore members of the Anthem community are ready to give up. I mean, if you go to the subreddit, the mood there is just overwhelmingly negative in a way that I haven't seen, since Fallout 76, but Fallout 76 at least now is in a more stable state where they are releasing content regularly and where the loyal Fallout 76 players are being kept relatively happy, whereas with Anthem, it just keeps going downhill, it just keeps under-delivering, and that's why it's so important to market your game properly, to be honest with your audience, rather than setting these expectations that you may not be able to deliver on. At one point, Anthem lead producer Ben Irving called the false marketing of the E3 2017 gameplay presentation the cost of transparency. That's what he actually said to a Reddit user who pointed out all these things in E3 2017 and 2018 that didn't make it into the final game. But that is utterly bullshit. This is the cost of blatant deception and very poor planning. And we know how badly this game was planned out based on the Anthem expose detailing the troubled development, the mismanagement, all the terrible shit that went on behind the scenes. Anyway, I've said all there is to say about the matter. I'd love to hear what your take is on the current Cataclysm compared to what we have been told and seen in the past in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update and discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. To be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.